Good afternoon. Welcome into Of His Own Word, part number 7, and the now third show we've recorded in the last month, which, wow, I even impressed myself here. Today I'd like to welcome back Dr. Louis Esposito from Able, New Hampshire, among other distinctions.
Thank you, Ian. Welcome.
And also note that you're the first guest that I've had back for a second time.
Oh, am I really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Okay. On today,
First one so far, though.
well, first one so far, yeah.
First one so far. You're going to have to start doing Roman numerals or something. You're going to get too high to count.
Well, that just did it. I've hosted 7 of these between doing ones myself and having yourself and state representatives,
No, it's definitely my pleasure to
other
be
like-minded individuals in, and
here.
quite the experience already on today's program. Like I said on the top, we're talking about the New Hampshire Autism Council today, getting more into what their mission actually is, some of the objectives, brief overview on the membership, all that fun, and then addressing some concerns and questions that have been brought to my attention regarding the Autism Council repeal bill currently in the legislature. And then, a little too fast for myself here. And then, feels like I'm beating a dead horse here, gang, but we're talking about the state legislature one more time for now. The 6th show of 7 so far, so one way or the other. A little bit of background about ourselves. My name's Ian Hound. I have hosted now 7 of these programs, and I was diagnosed on the autism spectrum back in 2011. Originally, I was inspired to speak out when Federal Department of Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced that they wanted to do an autism registry last spring. And the one thing that I saw out of that, and I've said this right along, the one thing I wasn't hearing was, how could that possibly go wrong, number one?
Yeah.
And 2, how problematic is that?
Absolutely.
Would it be used for what they said it was going to be used for? Louis, I'll take it here.
My name is Dr. Louis Esposito. I'm the Executive Director of Able, New Hampshire. We are a grassroots disability justice organization that promotes full inclusion for people with disabilities. And what we're trying to do is remove systematic barriers that prevent people from being included within their communities.
Oh, for sure.
Prior to this role, my background, I was a former supportive education teacher. Not too far, I spent a couple years over here at Alvern High School. I also was a teacher over at Merrimack High School. And I also have a background in as a paraprofessional, and I also supported adults with developmental and intellectual disabilities in community-based and vocational programs. That all led me to work on my doctorate, which I focus on the identity creation process of autistic college students as they reflected on special education. So I'm deeply rooted in education reform and trying to promote inclusive voices and voices of people with disabilities all over.
Yeah, and that's one of the main goals that I've had in starting this program, and
so I love coming
not just talk about my own story, but uplift others that are similar to myself and have found along the way, but also highlight some of the behind the scenes work too.
Absolutely.
Like we're seeing with Able.
Yeah.
And bonus points. Some of our audience may in fact recognize Dr. Esposito from episode number 2 that we did back in January when we had Representative Lily Foss of Manchester on with us that particular afternoon.
That was a great day. I'm looking forward to doing this again today.
Yeah, for sure. And then we get into some of the housekeeping. Sarah Chazinski and I sat down for part number 6 a couple weeks ago and discussed this at a little more length. Unfortunately, with crossover day being when it was, the New Hampshire House had to act on the House portion of the bill by midnight on Friday, the 13th of March, which led us to a bit of a mixed situation, which we'll elaborate here upon a little bit later. Among the highlights of that, House Bill 1316 in regard to autism data privacy, and 1593, which we'll talk about here in a moment, they were both allowed to expire with no vote being taken on them either on the Wednesday or Thursday 2 weeks ago. Or, excuse me, as I said in part 6, the New Hampshire House Republicans flat out refused to vote upon them. I don't know how much plainer I can be here. And unless there's new developments with those two bills, this will be the last time we're updating on them.
The work doesn't end, though. The work doesn't end, because...
Well, that's an excellent segue to what I was just about to say here, that on the other side of that, House Bill 1337 regarding the repeal of the New Hampshire Autism Council passed on a party line vote, as highlighted in Part 6. All 8, count them 8 state representatives for Hudson Litchfield voted in favor of the repeal. And with that, House Bill 1337 moved on to the New Hampshire Senate Health and Human Services Committee. We're still waiting for specifics on when that hearing's going to be. All that being said and all that fun, we're going to be pivoting into beginning to showcase some of the organizations and groups that are working behind the scenes on both the legislative side, but within our community. First up, we'll be talking about the Autism Council here a little bit more at length, because goodness knows I've referred to it on 6 of the 7 shows already, so perhaps overdue into what do they actually do? What is the Autism Council? And for those at home, I've put up what they define their purpose is from the New Hampshire Council on Autism Spectrum Disorders website. Louis, I understand that you're heavily involved with this, and
I would say...
And one of your many titles, so I'll kind of let you take it.
I wouldn't say I'm heavily involved. I don't sit on the council. It's just something that, us at ABLE and myself on a personal level, I do support. And I think, what it's intended to do was to provide a location for people to better the services and better the supports throughout New Hampshire for families that have kids with autism and for adults with autism.
For sure.
And if you look back in 2008, 2009, there was a lot of discrepancy about what was going on within the autism community. Definitions have changed since then, right? Like back before then. I mean, that was even before you were diagnosed, right? 2011, right?
It wasn't until fairly late on, a lot like Representative Foss, that I finally got the clarity of that's what was going on.
Absolutely, and I think there's a lot of people that are in those situations, but autism has been, something that's been getting more and more attention, and really, I think people were looking for a location where they could have a conversation and start developing and looking at how we support people with autism throughout our state, and what supports are needed, and where are we lacking. And the Autism Council had, when it first came out, there was a lot of successes. I actually, I attended a meeting almost like about 10 years ago when I first attended a meeting, and it was nice seeing everyone at the table working together. Since then, the definitions of autism has changed, right?
For sure.
The DSM-5 came out, and they removed pervasive developmental disorder, or they removed Asperger's, and the criteria about how to diagnose autism has changed. And I think we see a lot of increases in diagnoses because of the criteria changes. And the understanding of it, and before that there were different categories, right? But now everyone's kind of under this autism umbrella. And there's a lot of mixed reactions around that. And it just kind of shifted how the type of supports that people do need afterwards, right? Someone with they leveled autism into 3 different categories. And someone that needs more support and had more functional needs required more intensive supports, either at home, at school, or in the community, and vocationally at places of work. But then others, I have people that I'm close with that are autistic, and they don't require the same level of supports. Yet it's still all under one large umbrella, right? And this is a location where people could get together to kind of determine where the supports are, the similarities and the differences between the categorizations, and kind of hear the perspectives of the, I guess I don't want to say the major players, but medical professionals and different councils and different organizations, disability focused, to get together to kind of talk about all the different services that could help a child from birth until, to old ages. So that was the intent of it. And it did die down after, right around time of COVID. And the hope is to really revamp it and, kind of have a new generation of people that could go in there and start talking about the supports that they need, because things are a lot different in 2026 than they were in 2011 or 2009. Right?
Oh, for sure.
The whole world's different.
And it's something that certainly Alejandro and I talked about last fall when we did the basically pilot show for this series, that it's been continually evolving. The definitions have changed.
Yeah. And
our knowledge of it has gotten better, I dare say.
And continue to change too.
The
DSM-5 came out in 2014 and around that time, and a new version will be out within a few years, and there might be different categorizations and different definitions afterwards.
And I mean, that drives back to one of the biggest points of misconceptions that I have heard, certainly in the last 15 months, that, we can cure autism. No, you can't.
Yeah.
The best we can do is manage it. I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard, okay, not all of our elected officials, but enough of them and their designees insisting, you can cure it just like you can the common cold or COVID or the flu. It's neurological, it's inherited, it's genetic. Based on the current science, there is no defined cure.
And even getting into the fact that we were talking about a cure really kind of emphasizes that there's something innately wrong with being autistic, which there's not. It is
definitely not.
And it kind of, we do need to shift that conversation. It's not a horrible thing. It's part of, it's part of people. It's part of our communities. And there's a lot of brilliant people and a lot of really productive people in our communities right now that are autistic, that are contributing, and as little or as much as they can. And I think it's important to understand that as well, that it's not something to remove from somebody.
And for those who watched part number 6, there's some really notable athletes, celebrities, call them what you wish, that are in fact flavors of autistic.
Yeah.
But they're not only very capable, but highly successful in their given fields. And we highlighted with part number 6, when I had Sarah in here, Simone Biles, the U.S. Olympic gymnast, very accomplished in her field, very well known, household name, I dare say. It was news to me that
I didn't know that either.
she's on the spectrum.
And I think it's becoming more and more commonplace. I think people are getting diagnosed later in life, especially women, honestly. A lot of women are getting diagnosed later in life. And there are a lot of people that are doing some fantastic things, but a lot of people are just also living their lives. That they're firefighters, they're police officers, they're teachers, they're doctors, state representatives, right?
I know, we happen to know two.
And there's probably
both of which have been on the program with us at different times.
And I think there's a lot more people that could be diagnosed with autism that probably are unaware that they could be diagnosed with it.
And I mean, it would not surprise me that some of my best friends from school are in fact very similar to myself, where, okay, they may not know it, or they may have just found out about it, but they're just as capable as you or I am with the right support, right conditions. Let's see, there we go. And then we get in, yeah, I think we kind of covered that already.
Yeah.
But for those watching on streaming, wherever you may be, we've got, again, from the website, a little bit of the background history in their own wording here. Then we get into, there we go. Then we start to talk about the membership. The Council on Autism Spectrum Disorders is defined by New Hampshire RSA 171A32. Council members represent a broad cross-section of agencies, organizations, professionals, support individuals, along with family members and self-advocates. And then we've got...
And I guess one thing I just want to emphasize too is,
go ahead.
if you have questions about the Autism Council, go to a meeting.
Oh, for sure.
Listen to it. Go to the website. They have all their meeting notes. They have the most recent annual report. Like, things I feel are getting accomplished right now.
And to that end, and as you bring it up, a lot of what we're using for talking points with the PowerPoint here today, much of it is pulled from their own website.
Yeah.
So it's right there in their own wording. Then we go into, like I said a few moments ago, the foundations of the Council on Autism Spectrum Disorders is described by RSA 171A32. Paragraph 1 gets into the different organizations, individuals, and that make up the membership. The duties are also defined in paragraph number 2. The significance of this gets us into, once again, the discussion about our least favorite piece of legislation right now in House Bill 1337, 2026, which would repeal this council completely.
Yeah.
And for what? And in the current legislative session, the New Hampshire Autism Council is facing repeal as described by House Bill 1337. Louis and I talked about this in part number 2 at length. So just a brief overview. It would repeal 171A32 completely. That's the statute that governs the foundation of the council itself. And this is a correction from our show in January. It would then amend 171A33, talking about the Disability Quality Council, which I certainly would like to talk about at a later point. And it would amend 265-3C in reference to paragraph 2. Again, all of this was gone over in more length in our second show. There are some sizable concerns and questions in regard to any said repeal effort, and the first of those, why the repeal of the Autism Council? Why now, when they are trying to resolve their situation, get back to a point of being more functional, and they've, at the time of our show, they've taken steps towards that already. The next 2 points are the particular key we want to hit home here. Why repeal the Autism Council without a meaningful plan to replace it?
Yeah.
And why is just repealing it such a bad idea? Louis, if
I think
you want to take that a little bit here.
There are a lot of criticisms. There are a handful of criticisms. I don't want to say a lot. The council wasn't doing much for a good chunk of time. In 2024, there seemed to be some momentum, and there was progress in a couple years before that to get a kickstart. It just didn't go. In 2024, it started kind of moving forward, and there was a bill that was in place in the 25 legislative season to help some of the problems. And one of the biggest problems with the Autism Council, it's a group of volunteers. right? Or
Sure.
professionals that could go in the middle of a day. And one of the requirements for these councils is you have to attend in person, be there in the physical building. And it's a huge barrier for people with disabilities to get to locations. Often people don't have transportation, or if they could pay for it, it is rather expensive getting all the way to Concord if you're living out in Keene or you're living out in Dover or Hudson, right?
And plus there's a time commitment to it too.
There is,
'Cause
yeah.
At least from where we're sitting here at HGTV in Hudson, it's better part of an hour one way.
Yeah.
On a good day, that is.
On a good day, right? And you know, that was a concern. So initially there were a lot of meetings that they didn't meet the quorum requirements, so they had to stop them before they'd even started. And they seem to have worked that out where they're getting there and they're having consistent meetings now. The other criticism, you know, if it's not working, why just eliminate it? And that one bothers me so much because it's really hard to get something like this through the legislature. As we know, we've looked at bills, and you know, we don't know if there's going to be something that's going to be created afterwards. There's no model. There's nothing that I've heard that's going to be a replacement for this. So why continue to try to dismantle it? Why we could actually take steps to improve it?
For sure.
And I think that is the ultimate goal, is to make this a council that's functional, that is providing supports and services to autistic individuals and family members and, you know, our communities, make it more efficient. And, you know, throwing it away is going to have us restart it, or, you know, a lot of people that are in the council might be just done with it at that point, you know, and might be frustrated. And it's a challenging endeavor.
And that was one of the things I was hearing in rewatching the committee hearing on it was, why not give them credit where it's due and acknowledge the fact that they're trying to right the ship, get their own house in order, and then give them a timetable to show that they've gotten the criticisms addressed, gotten the issues sorted out, so that they could continue. As written, House Bill 1337 does none of that. It's repealing it for purely repeal's sake. And then we've got a link and QR code to the last time Louis and I were together on this show, addressing it at a bit more length. And then we've got some additional concerns about the current situation. First of which is, why would shifting the Autism Council's duties and responsibilities to another already existing council that hasn't dealt with this or doesn't ordinarily deal with it be such a bad idea?
Well, and we could talk about the Quality Council. I know we've talked about, you know, having another episode about that.
Quick and fine for today. We'll come back to this one.
But the Quality Council is designed to oversee and provide input on the whole developmental disability system, the adult service system. And not every person who's autistic qualifies under that umbrella.
Sure.
So you were missing a large chunk of people that are not going to be represented that would could benefit from increase of supports and awareness. The Quality Council is not designed to handle all that work, and it would shift their purpose and leave a lot of people out of that conversation.
And that's very true. Just a quick housekeeping note. We did, in fact, reach out to the Disability Quality Council and invite them on for today's program. As of right now, they're
it's you know, one of the things, again, I sit on the Quality
they're doing
Council.
their diligence, and we'll feature them once they have had time to consider the invitation. The invite does stand.
Yeah, we'll get to it
just
another
to be clear. And then a progress update on 1337, which after the party line vote in the House a couple weeks ago, it's been assigned to the New Hampshire Senate Health and Human Services Committee, and we're waiting for further details on when the hearing's likely to be.
Stay tuned.
For sure. It's not next week, I can tell you that already. Then we get into everybody's favorite topic, the New Hampshire Legislature. Goodness. In this next part, we're going to be talking a little bit more about what has happened so far since the session was just getting underway when Louis and I were here last time.
Yeah.
So checking in on A, what's happened, and B, where do some of our collective priorities stand in terms of have they moved forward, are they tabled, what the situation is here, and then we'll get into some of the bills that Abel opposed in the first half of the session. Louis, if you would.
Yeah, so we follow, at the start of the legislative season when the initial LSRs came out, we had about 400 on our plate that we were looking at. And obviously at that point it's too much for our organization to kind of follow each and every one of them. So we had to kind of wind them down. But we focus on categories like housing, voting rights, transportation, disability justice rights, equity, and education. So some of the bills that you see here are kind of all spread out. But one is, HB 1815, which redefines the adequacy of what a school is supposed to provide a student. And it doesn't necessarily seem like it's a disability bill, but it absolutely is, because every student that receives supportive education services through special education is a general education student first. And when we start reducing what an adequate education looks like, the expectations become less and less to support those students, which is one of our biggest fears. HB 1792 is another one that we're really worried about. That one is banning LGBTQ plus and CRT content in public schools, and has a lot of legal ramifications behind it too. It also allows for, if a teacher gets or is saying the wrong thing, could be wrongfully, it's a mess. I guess check that one out yourselves, guys.
Oh yeah, for sure.
1788 voids DEI contract, and I think that's a misconception that disability does not fall under the DEI umbrella.
It very much does.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion are three of the things that we focus on within our organization.
Exactly.
And we're very worried, and we've seen some of the repercussions of this. Like some of the DEI provisions. Would they prevent a school from, learning more about neurodivergent students? Would they prevent a school from, learning more about how autistic students might need different supports and having specialized training on that? So we're very nervous about how that looks. Talked about 1337, HB 1196. Housing is a significant issue for every Granite Stater. And it's consistently polling at one of the top issues and concerns for people that live here and want to afford here and grow up and live and have families and be part of communities. And this would repeal the Housing Champion Program, which supported different housing developments. And we're very nervous that that one's going to get through. 1778, personal identity theology. That's another one that we are concerned with too, based off the DEI conversations. And another one was HB 1754, which is the repealing the multi-tier structural system of support for behavioral health in schools. There are a lot of different bills. This was just a small list, I feel.
Oh, for sure.
There's other bills like centralized locations to receive specialized services in schools, increasing restraint and seclusion in schools, all things that really affect the disability community. So we've been following a lot of these bills, and some bills are going to keep going, and some bills that we were opposed to are gone. So we still have our work to cut out with the second half of the legislative season.
Oh yeah, very much so, and that's certainly why once again I brought 1337 up, basically at the top of the program this afternoon, to highlight that that's just one of multiple that is still continuing on.
Yeah. And we had some bills that we supported too. We like to move forward and champion some of the causes that we're behind. And some of these bills were some of the ones that we supported. HB 1593 was something that we're really passionate about this year, which would have codified 504 supports into New Hampshire state law. Right now, what we're seeing is the federal government's ability to listen to civil rights complaints that someone's 504 might not have been protected is pretty much 90% of what they used to do. So a very small fraction are actually getting heard. So we're worried about that. We wanted to bring that to New Hampshire, and New Hampshire has a long history of bipartisan support for causes like this. And it was essentially wanted to be brought to a interim study period, but it was unfortunately tabled because it wasn't voted on a couple weeks back. Right to know exceptions. I mentioned that briefly with the Autism Council. There are a lot of people with disabilities that are not able to participate in government-run organizations like the Quality Council or Autism Council, and
For sure.
even like school boards and other municipality organizations, right? And how could you participate if your health prevents it, if you're taking care of a loved one with a disability and you can't get the respite that you need, and or if transportation is a barrier. And this would have allowed people to participate in these. And this is our second year supporting this bill, and it was another bill that was quickly ITL'd and put out the pasture, I guess. Report on increasing disability housing lending practices, disability-related service and support. So as you can see, there's a lot of bills that we were following.
Definitely a common theme there, but do continue.
Commission to study supportive or study assistive technology. That was one that it passed the House, and we're really excited about that one, which would look at different assistive technology, which is anything that would support somebody to improve their way to work or live in their homes. It could be something as basic as your eyeglasses. That's assistive technology in some way.
Sure.
Things like as advanced as an AAC communication system. So it's a really wide range. And with the prevalence of things like the like 3D printers now, there's so much availability, and the technology is getting cheaper and cheaper and more accessible. So this is going to be a great opportunity to really kind of focus on how we could support people with disabilities throughout their whole lives with different types of assistive technology. So we're really excited about that one. And we'll get to 670 later, and that's another one that we've been following.
Well, that's going to be a little bit more,
Yeah.
more of a discussion here in a moment.
Yep, both of those two bills again, yeah. But, one of the things that we keep seeing over and over again, and if you look at the previous slides, you see the percentages of online testimony. And there's a reason why we put those in there today, is because there seems to be a very big disconnect between what the online portal system is saying and the amount of testimony coming out to support or oppose these bills, and what our legislative branches are currently doing. So,
And then what eventually said in executive session, at least with the New Hampshire House side of it, it's on record. You can find that. You can find the playback of that on YouTube, and that's at least in part the reason why I called out Representative Manger so harshly on 1316 when their executive session came up, because there is very much a disconnect this session, like Louis is saying, and Sarah and I talked about this last time. House Bill 1316, for example, the autism data privacy, 11 out of every 12 people were for it. And the committee partisanly recommended ITL because they were concerned what the federal administration would do if we passed it. I'm not making this up. Look, honestly, look back at the YouTube playbacks. That's exactly their point.
And I think, part of the legislative process too is, what makes New Hampshire really unique and really great is that, your voice counts, your voice matters. Every bill has a hearing. There are 400 House of Representatives, so you can have a conversation
definitely
with them a lot easier than someone that is representing, thousands of more people. And we have multiple ways to express our opinions on bills, including emails, calling you up, finding your legislator in the grocery store, things like that. But one of the
or finding them on town voting day, which small world that in fact happened with me.
Happens a lot, yeah.
I was voting in the town and school election a couple weeks ago, and Board of Selectmen Chair Dylan Dumont happened to be running check-in in an official town capacity, no less. Now, after some of the things we've talked about on the program and how they've chosen to represent us, I chose not to engage in conversation because I felt that there was nothing polite that could have been said in a public setting. So
And I hear
admit it.
I hear the frustration, but I really do think that is, I'm going to push back at that a little bit. I do think it's a great way to just have that face-to-face. I'm Ian, I could have that conversation with my representative. And, we do it all the time, and we encourage a lot of people to do that. But it is intimidating, and it is, sometimes you do get really frustrated about how your representative votes. But it's also important to let them know that, hey, I saw what you did and I don't agree, because there's, like we said, there's multiple ways of representing, going to the State House and submitting online testimony, reporting online testimony, but the most important way is the vote, which is the one voice that they can't quiet.
And reporting back upon it, which slightly unintentionally what I've endeavored to do with this very program. And Louis and I have talked about multiple times in this session already that, okay, it's not what I intended it for, but this whole platform gives me a little bit of a unique position.
Absolutely.
And, okay, it's been a work in progress, but still trying to find
You're doing great.
right way to call out what's been going on.
Yeah.
Because it needs to be said, it needs to be spotlighted. And
I agree 100%.
we've seen in the past couple of slides, too.
Yeah. So just a couple bills to highlight here. HB 1815, that was a bill that you talked about earlier that changes the whole, what an adequate education looks like. That passed both the House and the Senate. 99% of the people that testified online were against the bill. And it passed both the House and the Senate and could be signed by Governor Ayer as early as today. The 1792, 78% against. 1788, 97 against. And the most ironic one is 1114, which would have allowed the public input to be on the permanent record, which was also tabled and put away. But just to emphasize that this is a way for people with disabilities to communicate their thoughts on bills. And I know there's a lot of other reasons why someone would do it, but specifically talking about disability community, getting to the State House is tricky.
For sure.
Transportation and timing of things too. Having a hearing at 9 a.m. is not always feasible for somebody.
Or purposely, like with House Bill 1316, for example, waiting for mid-afternoon.
Yeah. It's tricky.
For both the hearing and then the eventual executive session that they had upon it. And we said in part number 6, the full House never actually did get around to voting on it. And that's just certainly one of many examples we've talked about already today.
There are plenty.
And I think, like I've said with part number 6, it's absolutely cowardly and disgraceful that that's what we're seeing right now. And I'm looking ahead, certainly, into the second half of the legislative session and later on in the year into whole. My concern is it's going to continue because we're not necessarily going to fix this issue this year.
Well, I think it's just also important to just, raise it up. I think people are talking about this more and more. And, this is another opportunity to, hey, you could actually sort on the online testimony portal how your town voted. Just categorize it by alphabetical order with town, and you can see all the people from Hudson and Litchfield and other areas how they voted and kind of compare it to what their legislators voted.
And certainly Hudson, Litchfield, I highlighted those on purpose because that's where our program is based here, and felt that was the most relevant. Let's see. Now now we get to the not so good news, the things that we were striving for but came up short for whichever reason, whichever excuse,
and it's
however you want to put it here.
It is frustrating. If you look here, you can see like some of the bills that were really supported had overwhelming support, and they were not progressed. So, or move forward. So, like I said, it's another opportunity to let your legislators know, that if you, agree or disagree with some of these bills or the bills that you're following or that care about, let them know.
For sure. And I mean, we went over some of these already in terms of what they actually do, but I mentioned this to Louis electronically before today's program that 13, 16, the autism data privacy, medical data privacy, and a whole is a big motivator for me and part of the catalyst for this very program. Because I look around us and I look at, okay, yes, technology is evolving. That's good and bad for the individuals that we advocate for and speak on behalf of. But also it raises an area of concern too. And I look back at things as common with what happened with St. Joseph's Hospital in Nashua and them having a sizable data breach last year.
Yeah, I remember that.
As technology is evolving, there is an inherent risk behind it. And then you want to take the other side of that and go back to the autism registry we mentioned at the top. There's a whole other layer of issues there too. And to A, are they asking people like me to use the information? Are they asking people like State Representative Foss for the information? Between ourselves, my suspicion would be no. And B, is that what they would actually use it for? Or as we've seen in other arenas, other disciplines, does it just get shuttled to a whole other federal agency too? That's another big concern at the moment.
No, I hear you. Very concerning.
Now with 1815, you did kind of give us a spoiler on there could be additional development as soon as
I mean, this is a little
later
bit
on in the
outdated
day
too.
for
Like
recording.
It's out of the Senate now. It's actually heading to Governor Ayoutte's desk.
Indeed. And then now we kind of look at a couple of things that we're looking ahead towards in addition to 1337, which is still very much in the equation, very much in the discussion. Senate Bill 101 in regard to open enrollment, they had a hearing this past Wednesday afternoon on it. And from my understanding, from reliable sources, there's going to be a part 2 that's next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday morning, that's right.
And when they're going to resume the hearing.
So this one, I mean, there's a handful of bills that we're following. This one is, I think it's really important for just how we view education in our state. What is very alarming is how fundamentally it could potentially shift how education is run all over our state. And what open enrollment does, it allows for, and every town lately has been voting on open enrollment, and it's becoming more and more of a common thing. And usually the town gets to vote on how many, if we allow open enrollment, yes or no, yes. And if you do, how many seats can go out and how many seats come in. And you've probably seen that in some of the, I'm not sure if Hudson did it, I'm not sure if Litchfield did it.
I don't recall if we did on the latest go around or not. We had
plenty of bills out there.
We had a lot of other stuff going on. Somewhere around 35 different warrant 35 or 37 different warrant articles between school and
it's quite a bit.
Town this last go around a couple weeks ago.
But open enrollment, would allow a student to apply to any school in the state. So theoretically, you could have a student from Hudson that wants to go to Salem, or a student from Londonderry that wants to come to Hudson. And fundamentally, that's,
or the other way around. For example.
And I think what makes, and other states have had this model, but what makes New Hampshire unique is we are 50th in state funding towards education. Everything's now localized, right? Like with local property taxes. So this would allow for local funds to go to different schools. So I'll give you an example, and trying to put a more special education perspective, supportive education perspective on it. If you have a student in Hudson that does not want to attend Hudson school districts anymore, and they want to attend, let's say Salem. How far is Salem from here? About 30 minutes?
Approximately that,
They would have to apply to Salem High School, and there's 4 criteria that they base their applications on. It's about your attendance, it's about your disciplinary record, and I'm sorry, the other 2 are escaping me right now. But one of the things that you don't include is your IEP or a 504 or anything like that. So you could have a student go to Salem High School and they get to Salem High School, and now all of a sudden this student's IEP follows. The sending district is responsible for the IEP. So Hudson will still need to have that IEP and be in charge of it. And Hudson would still also need to pay for the expenses within the IEP. So the services that are inside of it, including speech, OT, PT, the educators, paraprofessionals, all that money is now going to go to Salem High School to pay for those things.
Sure.
So fundamentally, it could be exceptionally expensive. And vice versa. Let's say you have a student from Londonderry that comes to Hudson. Great. There's a couple open spots in the 4th grade, but you don't know who that student is. And all of a sudden they come and they have, let's say, a 504 because they have FM communication systems. Let's say Hudson's not prepared for that. Now all of a sudden Hudson is responsible to provide this FM communication system to the student, which is rather costly. And if you say to a student, no, you can't come because we can't support your needs, that's discrimination. Now you're opening up potential lawsuits. This could be a really expensive thing for a lot of school districts. And I think the loss in between is the student who might not be getting the services and supports that they're waiting. You could have a disagreement between the two schools. There's a lot of things that could go wrong. So I'm very nervous about this one and what it can mean to supportive education, all education in general.
And I mean, it would certainly, if it came up for a vote here in town, it would be a point of contention. Because among other things, we were arguing amongst ourselves at town deliberative session, and Mike and Matt, who are currently behind the camera at the moment, can attest to, we were arguing about hiring firefighters, for goodness sake.
And this wouldn't even
and
be...
that's not even related.
And the thing is, as of right now, open enrollment is actually legal in New Hampshire. It's up to the towns to decide. And this bill would actually make it would take the say from the town completely away. It wouldn't matter anymore. So it opens it up for everybody, regardless of what this town says.
And I mean, I'm going to defer on that. I'm sure Mike Johnson, our director of community media here in Hudson, or Matt can enlighten me, but I don't believe that that's come up here in Hudson, at least at this point, in terms of where we weigh in upon that.
Yeah, I don't know either. I should have done my research a little bit better, but it is something that, if SB 101 passes, regardless of what the residents of Hudson thinks, it would, be something that they would have to address. The other bill that we're following very closely is called SB 670, and this already passed the Senate and is currently in the House. And this bill was created in response to a series of articles that were created through by William Skidmore from the New Hampshire Bulletin. And in these articles that came out around November, they detailed and chronicled neglect and abuse within the disability system. If you haven't had a chance, please take a look, but also take a look from the perspective that it is actually really hard to read. In these articles are people being abused by their support staff, kicked, hit, yelled at, thrown on the floor, people dying in vehicles, left in the cars, and suffocated, people being found lost in, the woods. And I get chills just thinking about it, and, left because they weren't getting the right supports. And these were from situations a few years ago, but these are things that are happening right now. A recent article came out a few weeks back that detailed the abuses, or detailed the complaints that were filed and suspicious deaths from the months of, I believe it was June through December of this past year. This is still ongoing. And what this bill does is an attempt to help understand and provide more oversight of these abuse and neglect within the developmental disability system. So this is something that is very important for our communities. Obviously, this is a life or death situation for a lot of people, and it's a lot of reasons why people are very fearful of, when their son or daughter ages out of the school system at 22 and they have required support in that BDS system, why they're really nervous about what that could actually mean for their loved one. So this one's a really important one, and I encourage you all to take a look at some of the articles and follow it.
And I would not only echo what Louis said about reading the actual articles themselves, I would also direct people to I believe it was Wednesday of this past week,
Yeah.
the New Hampshire Health, Human Services, and Elderly Affairs Committee actually had a hearing on this very bill during their hearing day, and I would encourage people to refer to the YouTube playback as well. Now, yes, I know it's odd that I'm saying that because I've been very critical of that committee on this very program, but this goes beyond it. This is a fundamental human rights discussion, for lack of a better term. It's not partisan.
And there's going to be more, there's going to be more work, obviously, ahead, even if this bill passes, and I suspect it will. But there's right now the Quality Council is doing a series of stakeholder meetings about the various components of the developmental disability system and seeing why there are so many gaps. And I would suspect that there will be more, and I know the Disability Rights Center is also doing an internal investigation that, as an organization, they have privy to information that, the public doesn't. They're doing an internal audit of some of their systems and the complaints and abuse. So there's going to be more things coming out about this. So this is still really at the start of kind of unraveling the larger issues within the developmental disability system. So it's a fundamental question, and I know, I taught at Alvern. I was a teacher for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and they are now in the system. And so it is something that's very near and dear to me that we are able to provide people with the right supports and staff to live and thrive in their community, not just, what we're currently, seeing from some of these articles.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't believe I've seen him yet this afternoon, but Mike Pylon, the other production coordinator here at HCTV and Alvern grad, like myself, some of our best friends are the individuals that Louis and I are trying to uplift and speak up for, because either they're shy or they don't have quite the articulation skills that we do.
And I think that's part of the things that we're trying to as an organization and as a community and as a state and society, it's, how do we amplify those voices? And they might not always sound like you or I. They might come from a different form of communication, or there might be different ways to tell. But I think, it's something that we all need to just kind of sit back and wonder what we need to do better with.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, that's a lot of the reason that I've written to this calling, and some of my closest friends, certainly in high school, are in the very community, very demographic that we're talking about here. And as I was putting this PowerPoint together, and certainly last week, Able New Hampshire put together the graphic you see on your screen here, and I think it's actually an excellent illustration of what both Shauna Hallberg and I talked about in part number 4, about there being a disconnect between what the constituency is saying and what our representatives are actually doing. And goodness knows, Sarah Shazinski and I talked about this 2 weeks ago when we were here. And it also gets into what Louis and I have been talking about here this afternoon, that, I mean, you can see it on the screen here. The amount of support and opposition that these bills are getting on the New Hampshire General Court online testimony site is not being reflected in the overall vote on the House floor, not reflected in the committee decision making.
Yeah.
It's cowardly, it's disgusting, it's frustrating, but at that same time it's motivating, because it's pointing to what do we need to be doing better, or what do we need to be taking a different approach on to get people to understand, why does it matter? Why do they need to be getting behind it? And we And certainly we've highlighted a couple of these already today. And certainly right after the pre-crossover day House session a couple weeks ago, goodness knows, I was on the phone with Louis and a couple of like-minded folks in our community asking the question, what's next? Or how could we approach it differently going forward?
It's the
Because
million-dollar
whatever we
question, right?
did for the first half of the session, unfortunately, didn't come out or didn't come to pass. But that doesn't mean we should stop, because a lot of these are very crucial areas.
Yeah. And just to point out too, I know it's easy to get, frustrated with the legislative process, and, especially seeing things like this too. And, it's not a sign for, if you have a cause and something that you believe in, to give up, but it is an opportunity to kind of reevaluate where, like you said, what's next? What do we do now? And it's really kind of getting more and more like, you look at some of these numbers here, let's double those numbers. Let's
Some of them
triple
are
those numbers.
staggering, quite
Yeah.
frankly. I
And-
look at 1336, which has been a regular pillar of the program so far.
There's a lot we could be doing.
And it gets back to that comment I made about 11 out of every 12 people supported it,
Yeah.
or 10 out of every 11 for rough estimation
Yeah.
here, but the point stands.
It's just, you got to keep going. You got to keep grinding. Sometimes the bills that you really are passionate about and the causes, it takes years, and we could agree or disagree about why. But every time you have an opportunity to do something like this, or talk to your neighbor, or have a conversation with somebody about this issue and enlighten them, not about the numbers, but enlighten them about the one issue that you're very invested in, and get more numbers for next year, and keep growing, because that's kind of what democracy is all about.
For sure. And then we get to the final housekeeping. I've got some light reading for those who are so inclined. The RSA 171A32 and web link for the New Hampshire Autism Council. Connect with us online, because again, this has been a kind of a growing
Absolutely.
process. We're on the HCTV website, YouTube, Substack, Blue Sky, Facebook. For those inclined, we've got QR codes on the screen for each of those. And then everybody that's been on so far, Louis, back here for now the second time.
And I appreciate you
As a
asking
matter
me
of
to come
fact.
back, and I look forward to the future episodes that we might put together.
And I mean, it's all interconnected if we think about it. I mean, yes, we've been heavy on the Autism Council repeal, we've been heavy on the data privacy angle, but it all connects back if you think about it.
They do.
I mean, look at the current events, look at the headlines. There's a common theme all the way through here. I mean, honestly, where would we be without these three
Yeah, absolutely.
very capable gentlemen providing tech assistance for now the 7th time through? Matt Guerrero, production coordinator; Mike Johnson, director of community media; Mike Pylon, production coordinator. And then breakdown of all of our YouTube links to date so far. And like I said on the top of the program, this is now our 3rd program in the last month and 7th overall. You might have noticed a theme here. I'm a fan of the QR code.
I like them too.
And now we come to the end of the program, and stay tuned for part number 8, which I would certainly intend to be coming up fairly soon here. Just a quick housekeeping note on that. Like I said partway through the show, and I did extend an invite out to the Disability Equality Council folks, and I want them, if they're watching us today, I want to make it very clear that I understand that ball's in their court, but the invitation does in fact stand.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Ian. I always appreciate our conversations, and like I said before, look forward to coming back again.
Yeah, and I mean, I was talking, and to close out, I was talking with Alejandro Urita yesterday, my right-hand man, my co-producer on this project, and as I said toward the top, when I started this program, when I started speaking out last year, it was never directly just about me or my story. It was about those who either can't because they're unable to, or are reluctant to do so.
Yep.
I'm speaking out not just for myself, but I'm speaking out for them as well. And certainly, there is a lot to be concerned about with our current state of affairs here in New Hampshire, and also nationally. But that's what drives me, that's what motivates me, in seeing everything that's going on and making sure that I am doing everything that I possibly can, and not just talking with my state level representation, separate of what I think of them. I'll make no bones there, but also driving it home to all of you, at home, on the road, wherever you might be, why this is important, and why ABLE is important, why the Autism Council matters, and not just the stereotypical biases that we all are hearing about at length right now, and not just the sound bites. And originally I started this out to be a 2-part program, and that was going to be it. As we come to the end of March, here we are, 7 episodes in.
It's not a bad thing.
3rd episode of the month. And for that, I am pleasantly surprised and truly grateful to all of you watching wherever you are for showing us that we've hit a nerve here. We're on to something. And I look forward to what part 8 is going to bring. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, Ian.